views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey friends, time for the Bronx Buzz. As you probably know, this is the program where we take an inside look at Bronx journalists, find out what they're writing about, what they're thinking about, and get a little insight as to who they are when you read and maybe even listen or watch in some cases as to what they're doing. Today and tonight, we are thrilled, I am thrilled, and I hope you will be too, that we have my longtime Bronx friend Howie Karpin with us. Howie is one of the official scorers of Major League Baseball and works as a columnist at NewYorkSportsDay.com. Howie, always great to talk baseball with you.
Oh, you bet. I had a good time to do it, too.
Well, here we are the morning after the World Series, so I guess we should start right there. People are talking about, one of the greatest series of all times, and look, any 7-game series is always exciting, but, from year to year, you look at the 75 series, certainly New York fans will remember the 86 series. Yankee fans won't love the 2001 series, but those were all great series. This was just another in a long line of great baseball World Series, wasn't it?
Yeah, the seventh game didn't have the gripping excitement that the other games had, unfortunately. But the fact that it was a real good World Series and you can size them up against the ones, throughout history, it makes it a good World Series. Two classic games, Game 2 and 5, which were unbelievable. And then last night, it just came down to Houston. It's funny, going into the game, I thought Houston would have to out-hit the Dodgers to win the game, but they actually out-pitched the Dodgers in that game, and a seventh game is a one-game deal, and Houston comes out on top.
I was thinking back to a World Series that I'm familiar with, and of course you are too. In the 1986 World Series, where the Mets had been down 3-2 coming home, they won that classic Game 6. And then going into Game 7, they were actually down and being no-hit in Game 7. But the guy that turned it around was that Davey Johnson had one extra pitcher that the Red Sox didn't have, that they hadn't seen, and he brought in Sid Fernandez, and he quieted the Red Sox and gave the Mets a chance to catch up. I thought Morton last night for the Astros did exactly the same thing. A.J. Hinch had one more pitcher that the Dodgers didn't have that could shut him down. Well,
you've talked to me over the years, and one of my pet peeves and one of my major baseball theories is that in the postseason, you have to overcome your flaws to win. Now, we all know Houston's bullpen was their flaw. So if you look back at the seventh game against the Yankees, he used two starters. If you look back at this series, he went to his starters mainly in the bullpen. And as you brought up, Charlie Morton, one of his starters, got on a roll. Thankfully, A.J. Hinch took a page from his old school background and stayed with the hot arm, which he did against the Yankees, and they won Game 7. Morton was on a roll. There was no reason to lift him, even in the National League Park. So, A.J. Hinch rolled the dice with starters to get past that erratic bullpen. The Dodger flaw was their offense in a lot of ways. As good as it looked, it basically was the same as the Yankee offense. It relied too much on the long ball, and we all know that dries up at times. Unfortunately for them, it dried up at the wrong time.
Well, Puig was up twice last night with men on base, and he's a power hitter and a guy you want to have up there, and he failed both times. To me, that, from the Dodgers' point of view, was about as big a turning point as any.
Absolutely, but that goes right along with the point I just made, that their offense can dry up.
Yeah.
That's why they went into that 16 out of 17 where they lost.
That's right.
Championship. It's funny, they had a stat that a team during the season loses double digits, has a double-digit losing streak. They never won the World Series that year. So, you had some people labeling the Dodgers a super team before they even won anything. It was ridiculous. They're a good team, terrific team, but they came up short.
Darvish, I've heard some talk this morning that people were saying, well, maybe they should have gotten him out of there. They should have handled it a different way. It's very difficult to yank a guy, you know what I mean, that early, even in a seventh game. Do you look back and double, second guess Roberts on that?
Well, I mean, as a baseball fan, going into the game, did you think Darvish was going to be that bad again? He's not that bad a pitcher.
No, he's a good
I'm
pitcher.
sure the Dodgers didn't think that, and I'm sure Roberts' plan was to get 5 innings or a couple of innings, 4 innings, even out of his starter, and get to Kershaw in the middle of the game to where either they could hold the lead or be close. Now, you had a lot of people saying, well, if Kershaw had that in the tank, why didn't he start? Well, if the Dodgers knew that, maybe they would have started him. But you're in the National League Park, so if they got behind, at some point he'd have to pinch hit for Kershaw.
That's right.
He couldn't just stay with him like in an American League game. It didn't work out. I mean, he's getting second guessed left and right. Just 8 days after he's being praised as a genius.
I got to tell you something, Howie. The game of baseball, it almost defines itself, and I truly believe that you can't get through the regular season, both teams winning 100 games. You can't get through, a division series, a league championship series, and then go to a 7th game of the World Series without having the best team win. You just can't do it. And you talked about some of the keys to the game or things that came out. Listen, the Astros played defense like crazy through the World Series and through the postseason, and they had a guy who got as hot as anybody. If Puig was as hot as Springer, we may be talking a different tale this morning. And so they were the best team.
True.
I don't know what to. And they had the best player. Well, Altuve is, it was like having, Ted Williams up there, even though he's only, 4'8".
It's scary. He's not even their best player. The shortstop is.
Well, that's true.
He just didn't show it in this series. But you're right. I mean, the Astros won one less game than the Dodgers, and that's the reason the game was in L.A. Thankfully, they came to their senses and got rid of that stupid All-Star thing.
Oh, yeah.
So the team with the best record got the home advantage. But as you say, the best team usually wins. I mean, especially when it goes that long. I mean, your flaws show up, your positives show up. And the Astros were a pleasure to watch because they were fundamentally sound. How many guys did they throw out on the bases in the Yankee series? They went against the analytics a little, too, by going to the starters. Everyone loves this bullpen era where you think you can live on your bullpen. You can't do it. And I think what happened in this World Series is people realize starters are important, and you're going to need starting pitching, not just bullpen.
And the last thing about the series, I definitely want to talk some Yankees and Mets. The World Series tends to make heroes out of guys you didn't think about. Certainly, a Met fan will know about Al Weiss, but you take a Gene Tennis. Listen, Springer is now a household name. Who knew he was that good? He is a whale of a ball player.
Well, he emerged in the last year and a half. He was on the trade block for a while. The Yankees were talking about getting him and a number of teams. But finally they stuck with him. He emerged. They moved him into the leadoff spot. And I thought he set the tone last night. I thought that they had to attack early. They had to put some pressure on the Dodgers early. And Springer got that with the leadoff double. And then they get on the board for 2 runs, and then he hits the homer in the second. And then they were able to maneuver the rest of the game with their pitch. For one game, series, if it comes down to one game, that's the way you do it. That's the game plan.
That's it. All right. Congratulations to the Houston Astros, their first World Championship. That's always nice to see. Howie, let's talk about the New York Yankees, our Bronx hometown team. Were you surprised that they decided not to bring Girardi back? He had gotten past that mistake. There's no other way to look at it. That mistake in the league champion in the division series. He won that series. He brought a team to the brink, which nobody expected, and yet they didn't bring him back.
Yeah, there was some. I was a little surprised, but not shocked because there were whispers. There was some kind of disconnect between Girardi and the front office. After that Game 2 disaster where he made that's a brutal mistake. You cannot make a mistake like that in that situation. He got lambasted for it, but after that, I think they had their mind made up already, even during the season. I think they were totally shocked that they got to where they were. I think they were kind of like rolling the dice, that almost like a bittersweet emotion where if they lost, okay, then we make the managerial change. If he won the World Series, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah, now
for
what
them
do you do?
Yeah, I think they would have been stuck, and they would have had to offer him a contract. But there was a lot of disconnect there, and there was. I think Gary Sanchez is a focal point of what went on here. I think his relationship with Sanchez, ripping him in the media, in late July there, which was not right. That wasn't good. That reflects on other players. Other players see that, and they get a little, they don't like that. So I think that was bad. And just the way his stubbornness with the lineup. I don't know if that came from the front office, but he kept judging the 2-hole, and he was killing a whole bunch of rallies in the postseason. He should have moved the kid. He kept saying, well, I don't know if it's going to work, but he never tried it. Hinch had Reddick batting second against the Yankees for 5 games. He did nothing. Then he moved him down to 9.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the managers do. You move the guy around. You're not benching him. You're just moving him. But he never moved him. Gardner would get on base. They never manufactured any runs. He never ran because they were worried about opening the base. It was almost like a shoot yourself in the foot kind of offense.
But, to me, it puts a lot of pressure on the next guy because really, what can you do other than what Girardi did, and that was get them, just a couple of games from the World Series. It seems to me there's a lot of pressure on the next manager to take it the next step, and that's a heck of a thing to put on a new guy. Well, you got to get to the World Series or bust, kind of thing. Do you have
enormous pressure.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of where they're going to go, who they're going to go, or what kind of guy they're going to bring in?
Well, to be frank about it, this is a guy who they can manipulate because that seems to be the way the GMs are going. Right. I have a feeling, I have an idea, maybe Rob Thompson, who's been with them. I don't see, I know they're throwing names out like Jerry Hairston and all these guys, and all of a sudden they're putting the Astro manager, Hinch and Roberts up on a pedestal. They did a good job with their teams. They didn't do anything outrageous, or above and beyond. So, what they're looking for is a guy they can feed this information to, that they're so caught up with the analytics that they want to feed them the information. He'd be like the messenger. He's not, but they don't realize that this guy in the dugout is still in the dugout, and he has to make calls on the fly. So they better have somebody who can make those calls on the fly, or else it's going to blow up in their face. And
certainly deal with a second guess, which is insane in New York. Last question about the Yankees. Tanaka, what happens there? I mean, do you anticipate that he will be in a Yankee uniform next year?
I find it hard to think that he'd leave $67 million on the table and opt out. But he is coming off a terrific postseason. I'll be honest with you, I don't trust it. I mean, he was good in the postseason. Don't forget, he faced the Astros, a team that loves the ball up high. They like that high fastball and right at the letters. And Tanaka's a guy who pitches low, so it almost matched up well for him. But other teams he may not match up that well against, and he got rocked, in the regular season. So he's been erratic. I mean, if he picks up the option, they have to bring him back. But I don't think they'll shed any tears or play any violins if he decides to opt out.
Howie, both you and I will pray to the gods that one day we will have the opportunity to leave $67 million on the table. Wouldn't that be nice? Listen, last a little bit about the Mets. I thought the Mets made an interesting, a bold, and a pretty good choice in selecting Mickey Callaway as their new manager.
Well, I'm not that high on it as you are, but I have my reasons. I think the Mets, I don't like the direction they're taking with the front office. I don't like the analytical approach. I don't think it's worked. I think they kind of get too caught up with these numbers. I'm tired. Their offense was lousy. Now that they have their starting pitching is going to be key next season. All right, so you brought this guy in. What is this guy going to do with the lineup on the field? Yeah, who's going to run the team on the field? They have holes. They need a third baseman. They don't have a second baseman right now.
Catcher is a question mark.
Catching is a question. An outfield spot. There's a lot of holes on that lineup. So, is this guy, are they going to bring in a guy who's going to deal with the lineup? Who's going to be his bench coach? And he hasn't really run a team yet. So there's a lot of question marks with this hiring.
Right, and really the one thing that he can't control, and we got to get out of here, the one thing that he can't control is what really determined the fate of the team, and that was the injuries. He's got to make sure those pitchers stay on the field. I mean, there's no question about that.
And how's he going to handle Cespedes with his mood swings at times? You know, you got a guy who's going to have to corral him in, because right now he's a key part of your offense. You know, they rely on him a lot. They've also got to work towards getting away from that reliance, but that can't happen by snapping your fingers. That's got to happen eventually.
Howie, we got to get going. Boy, two Bronx boys talking baseball. What could be better? So great to talk to you. Say hello to Kathy and the family. Hope everybody's well, and we'll see you around town. And maybe next spring we'll see you at the ballpark once again. Yeah,
always enjoy it, and anytime you need me, you got me.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to take a short break. The great Howie Karpin. Check him out on NewYorkSportsDay.com, and he's also one of the official scorers of Major League Baseball, and he's right there in the booth when things are happening. We'll take a short break. We'll talk with Rovert Wrising of the Bronx Times right after this.
Open up your books to page 360.
Did you just look at your phone while you was in class? You played yourself.
Talking about inspirational quotes.
You gotta believe in yourself. Don't ever play yourself. The key is to make it, so make it.
Louise, can you give me an example of an inspirational quote?
Don't play yourself. The key is to make it.
And who said that?
I did. Now that's a major key alert.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at getschool.com.
We are there, day one, with baby names and a gift that lasts a lifetime. We are there as you grow, protecting you and those you love. We are there when you get your first job, helping you to save for the future. We are there when you marry your sweetheart to help secure your new life together. We are there if the unexpected happens, to help you see life from a new perspective. We are there when you start your next chapter to make sure you get off to a great start. And we are there when you lose your soulmate to help make sure you will be all right. We are with you through life's journey. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. Get to know us and see what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
This video produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Back with you on the Bronx Buzz, and it is my pleasure to welcome back to the program our buddy Rovert Wrising from the Bronx Times. Nice to have you with us, Robert. How are you?
Doing well, Gary. Thank you for having me today.
Great. How things over at the paper? Everything all right?
Yeah, pretty busy. We're actually just finishing up some assignments that we did this past Halloween. So we have a lot of photos from that, yeah.
Right. We should mention, if people don't know, Robert is the photo editor there, so all the pictures of all those kids in costumes are coming Robert's way. Robert, one thing I do want to say before we get into some of the things you've been writing about, I thought the paper did an unbelievable job with their pink edition for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. What a great way to highlight the issue and then have content to support it. So I don't know if you want to mention anything about it, but I just thought it was just a tremendous a gimmick, if you will, or vehicle to communicate the importance of supporting the fight against breast cancer.
Yeah, I think so too. Like it's definitely one of the most interesting papers that we put together like every year, and yeah. And what our readers like always have like access to is definitely like resources for breast cancer awareness and treatment options.
Right.
And also some stories from like fellow survivors as well as medical professionals in that field.
Right.
So it's like a very interesting resource, and also to actually add a little bit of like a note to this, our paper is actually pink, and it's not just like in a figurative sense, it's actually
the paper. I didn't have a copy here, but it is a pink newspaper. And how could as anybody who picks it up, you'd have to notice. I just think it's a tremendous way of doing it. So congratulations to Laura and all the folks over there. I just thought it was great, and I wanted to make sure we highlight that on the interview today. Let's talk about some of the things you've written. It was earlier in the month, and I thought this was a tremendous story. Beth Abraham in the borough of the Bronx has this new Call 9 a telemedia program. Why don't you talk about that and what you wrote about? Again, another tremendous innovation in medical care.
Sure. So Call 9, it's a new telemedicine technology which was just launched recently at Beth Abraham. And it's a state-of-the-art technology delivering bedside emergency care to patients in nursing homes and in rehabilitation centers. And basically this serves as like a replacement for 911. So it pretty much like keeps the lines free of like any like unnecessary calls.
Right.
And also it provides staffing for on-site 24/7 emergency trained clinic care specialists.
So Robert, let me just interject. How does it work in terms of somebody has it at their bedside, somebody who may be ill or infirmed in some form, and then they can just get it and go right to it without having to go through the 911 system to get help, right? That's how it works?
Exactly. It pretty much eliminates the 911 system for these types of events. And what's pretty interesting too is like when the patient's suffering like a medical event, the facility nurse will have like people go to the patient's bedside with labs and diagnostics, and they'll actually tap the Call 9 app, which is immediately connected to an emergency physician. And what's really cool about this system is it actually has like a television screen, like type of monitor, and it connects to the emergency care physician, and they can actually see the patient.
I mean,
can see them too.
It's a great use of technology, and I love the fact that, of course, that you wrote about it. And now, do we know how widespread it is, or is it really just at Beth Abraham? What's the application of it?
Well, so far it's only in terms of in the Bronx, it's only at Beth Abraham,
Right.
And actually, like 2 weeks after it launched, as like I mentioned in my article, it was actually expanded into Centered Healthcare's North Manor Multi-Care Center in Nanuet, New York.
Right.
So it looks like it's a very recent. It is like pretty much like a more recent technology, and they are like hoping to eventually like expand it into like much more medical facilities.
It's win-win. I can't see how it would not work. I mean, it just makes total sense. And of course, as a Bronxite with some pride that it was invented here in one of our wonderful medical facilities. I mean, it's great. Let's talk about switch gears totally and talk about this Chicks Collins profile. This is kind of a fun story.
Yeah, this is actually a very interesting story. So Chooks Collins, he is actually a fashion designer, and he has a very interesting story. So he was originally born in the United Kingdom, and then he was then raised over in Nigeria. And pretty much like from there, he graduated university, and he was originally going to like accounting, but ultimately he decided to go into fashion because he just had much more of a passion for it. Like
Right.
he even told me like in his interview, he would just like be like interested in pretty much like designing fashion for people like he would see just like walking down the street. Like he would like come up with like ideas
Just from everyday people. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Tremendous. And what kinds of things is he producing right now?
Well, let's see. Right now, he is producing all sorts of different styles here. He actually, just to kind of preface all this, he does actually have his work exhibited at different things like New York Fashion Week, and even like international fashion shows too.
Right.
So.
Well, that's great. Listen, Robert, it's wonderful to promote stuff like this in the Bronx. You know, unfortunately, some people still see it as a surprise. I see it as an everyday occurrence, and of course, people like you and the Bronx Times, when you put it out there, we get a whole different view of what other people think about our borough of the Bronx. I do also want to talk about the crime victims support services that you wrote about. I've been a big fan of Joanne and friends with them for many, many years. They do just tremendous, tremendous work. So just talk about, they have a big event coming up, right? Is that what that's what you wrote about?
Yes, actually, they are having an event tomorrow, Friday, November 3rd, from 7:30 to 11:30 at the American Turners Club at at 748 Clarence Avenue in Throgs Neck. And this is their fall fundraiser, which is going to feature live musical performances by Elvis tribute artist Patrick Perrone. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to raise $60,000 to cover the program's costs. Because recently and this wasn't just like crime victims, this was just like services like in general that help crime victims were recently cut by like the state.
You know, just to let people know, the whole idea of the crime victim support services, if God forbid any one of us is a victim of crime or somebody in our family, there are all kinds of things that come up, whether it's medical bills, whether it's support in the future, or God forbid a family member is lost or incapacitated. They support, they help. And when you think about people who are most vulnerable in the borough of the Bronx, these folks get right to there to help those people and people who don't deserve to be in that circumstance. And it really, they just do immense work. And so anybody who can get out there tomorrow night, I guess that would really be great. Robert, before we let you go, anything coming up of interest that we ought to talk about? You want to give us a sneak preview of what we're going to see, what you've been working on?
Oh, sure. So for this week, I have a story idea that I'm trying to work on. It's a hackathon for that's going to happen next Friday and next
that's
Saturday
at Lehman College, right?
College.
Yeah. Now, what is a hackathon?
Well, basically, it's just like something to do like with like a lot of like computer programming. Like this is like where people can be exposed to the computer sciences, learn like a little bit about coding, and like all the different types of programs that programmers use like within the tech industry.
Right. All right, Robert, we're gonna have to let you go because we've essentially run out of time. But we always appreciate you coming on. We love what the Bronx Times is doing, and just keep doing more of it. I mean, that's the thing. You're talking about the Bronx. You're giving us a new image or a better image every single day, and we appreciate your time today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gary.
All right. Rovert Wrising in the Bronx Times. That's all the time we have for the Bronx Buzz. So we thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Bronx Buzz. And on Bronx Talk, we always got good things coming there. And on BronxNet, of course, we have great things. Good night. See you.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
We are there, day one, with baby names and a gift that lasts a lifetime. We are there as you grow, protecting you and those you love. And we are there as you start your next chapter. We are with you through life's journey. We are Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. Get to know us at socialsecurity.gov.
This video produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.